Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been a minute since I've been on this channel. I don't really know where to begin this story. I guess I'll begin by saying I had a very clear vision for what I wanted to do with this YouTube channel in 2023. So much so that I had blocked out a pretty specific content calendar that for a lot of reasons cannot and will not come to life. I really wanted to pivot the channel a little bit to talk about some different things. I'm always going to talk about intentional living, always going to talk about minimalism, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about other things that were happening in my life. Specifically, the fact that my husband and I bought some land here in Southern California and are on the path of trying to build a small, sustainable, off-grid house. And our goal was to sort of get through the design phase of the house in the first half, or first 3 quarters really of 2023, and finish the build by the end of 2024. And so I had so many ideas around the content that I wanted to create for that. I wanted to share the entire journey with all of you, what it takes to build an off-grid and sustainable home, how we're doing it, how to do it in the desert. So many ideas, all the ideas. I'm not ready to say that it's not going to happen. It is going to happen. We are going to build a house out here. I know that, I can feel that. It's just not happening easily or in the way that we hoped. And that kind of boiled down to like, well, now what am I going to do with my YouTube channel? This is really what I wanted to do, the content that I wanted to create, the direction I wanted to take the channel. And then because we encountered so many roadblocks, I got a little deflated in my energy and my drive to share my life. So here we are, back on YouTube. I'm going to start sharing what we're going through trying to build this house. We're not in a really great place with it right now, so perhaps I might talk about it this week and then make different videos for several weeks and then talk about it again. We'll see. This whole process has moved very slowly. But let me start at the beginning. So in 2022, we bought just under 2.5 acres out here in Joshuatree, California. Before we went into buying the property, we did quite a bit of due diligence to make sure that what we wanted to do from an off-grid perspective was feasible. We went through the process of making sure that we could dig a well and that we could afford to dig a well and that it was going to be something that was sustainable and would provide us water for a long time. We reached out to the county to make sure that we would get permitted for the well based on where we were. We reached out to both the county as well as the electric company to make sure that we could proceed with off-grid solar. We had our solar priced out to make sure that we would be able to afford off-grid solar based on the size of the house that we were doing. And then we also just spent a lot of time making sure that we were choosing land in a spot that we were really happy with. We wanted something that felt really remote and a little bit out there, but we still wanted access to all of the great things in Joshuatree. We wanted to be close to the downtown and we wanted to be close to the national park here and all the things that we love to do. So we spent a really long time trying to find land that we really liked and wanted and liked the location of, but also we had a pretty long due diligence process before we bought the land. So we purchased the land in the spring of 2022 and then pretty immediately after that started looking at what our build options were and trying to understand like how much it was that we felt like we could afford and what our options were from a sustainability standpoint. So we started down the path of, you know, should we do sort of like one of those modern prefab builds because factory built does have so much less waste than site built, but we also were looking into some architects, designers who might be able to do a sustainable site built house as well. We got really far down the path of pricing out and meeting with a lot of prefab companies and architects and narrowed it down to really 2. One is sort of a site-built architect and one is a prefab manufacturer. And so we were at the point where we're like, okay, we need to get real about what a bank will lend us for a mortgage. We have an idea in our heads about what our budget can fit for a mortgage and where we'd like to be at, but we need to get real about it, right? We need to get pre-approved. And so start reaching out to a bunch of lenders and pretty quickly we start getting the same answer back, which is that no traditional bank is going to lend for an off-grid property. And the reasons that we're getting are pretty consistent across the board. And I'm talking like big banks like First Republic, Bank of America, Citibank, like those types of banks. So really what we're hearing back from these lenders is two things. One, that there's no comps in the area that can help them value the house, right? There's no other, according to them, off-grid properties that will tell them the valuation of this house. The second thing they are saying is that to them, building a house that is completely off-grid is not up to community standards, was the quote that I got. And really what's in that statement is they don't see the investment value in an off-grid property. I need a sip of tea. So the way that we were planning to go off-grid was to have a well, to have a septic system, and to have solar that is battery tied and not grid tied. And so the first two are no problem. Things like that are done all the time, especially out here in the desert. The piece that's presenting the problem is the electric grid. So the bank wants to see that we have solar. You're required to have solar in California. They want to see that we have solar, but that solar is tied back to the electric grid. It's hard for me to tell this story and not get really fired up. It feels so short-sighted to me to say that the only way that we are going to give you money is if you are tied to the electric grid. That's the only way that we see value in this property. But it leaves me feeling really powerless because I don't have the money. Like, we're not the ones with the money. So we have no power in this situation. I also feel really disappointed that I didn't think to look into this. I don't think it would have changed the property that we bought, but it would have changed my expectations a little bit. It just did not occur to me that a bank would care whether you are on the grid or off the grid. So where does that leave us? It leaves us no closer to being able to build a house, unfortunately. There are a couple avenues to explore. Right now, we are trying to reach out to some local banks and credit unions here to see if they would be more open to the conversation, at least to talk to us a little bit about what we're planning to do, right? I couldn't even really get past a first conversation with a lot of the larger banks. So we're pursuing that. The architect who we've been talking to is very willing to help us as well. He was like, whatever you need, if we need some schematic designs to try and convince the bank that this is a good investment, they can see sort of the quality of the house that you're gonna build. But there's sort of standards and codes that a lot of banks have that are not just like, we'll convince you. It's, in some cases it's even out of the mortgage broker's hands. It's not even their decision. So I'm told. So yeah, my great idea that I was gonna bring you along this whole design and build process throughout 2023 died very quickly. And every single week that's gone by since the last time I uploaded a YouTube video, I've been thinking of sharing this story, and every single week I felt like I didn't want to, because I was like, we're gonna figure this out. Any second we're gonna figure this out. Any second we're gonna turn the corner and things are gonna start rolling really quickly. That's when I'll share the story. And it's not happening. Weeks and weeks and weeks are going by and we're in the same place. So plan B, the absolute backup that I hope we never have to fall back on, is that we could tie to the grid. It's not impossible with the piece of land that we bought. The neighboring plot next door has an existing pole at the far end, so we would need to extend it quite far, probably put up a couple of our own poles to then be tied to the grid, and that would solve the lending problem. But I have a really hard time with that. I want to be sort of realistic and weigh my own stubbornness with wanting to be off grid, with my want to also be able to move this project forward and live in this house and get out of a rental. But I don't want to give up on the off grid yet. I don't know at what point I'll feel like it's okay to give up on it. I hope I don't. But it's difficult for me to see a way around it at this point. But it has made me really reflect back on, why do I want to be off-grid? And in many respects, it is a sustainability thing, right? I want to tread as lightly as possible on the earth. That said, there's no impact to being off-grid, right? We're still going to have a bank of batteries that have an impact to produce and have a lifespan. Within our life, we'll probably need to replace that battery bank at some point, right? So there's no impact to being off-grid, but there is a lesser impact. But also the other side of that is that there is some personal sovereignty and independence that comes with not needing to rely on the electric grid. And that desire to me was really reinforced this winter, not with the electric grid, but with natural gas. We saw our gas bill quadruple this winter versus last winter. And we have, again, no power in that situation. We just have to find a way to pay that. And the instability of utilities is a real concern. It would be great to gain a little bit of control over providing for ourselves. So yeah, that's where we are. That's the story. That's where I've been and where my attention has been for the last 3 months. I had a friend ask me just last week, she was like, what's going on with your YouTube channel? And I was like, I may have killed it. The easiest way to kill a YouTube channel is to stop uploading. So if you're here, thank you for watching. I appreciate you coming back and being here and sticking by me through these changes and ebbs and flows of life. And I'll keep sharing what I figure out along this journey, and maybe I figure out that this isn't possible, and I'll share that too. Stand by for some typical minimalist content as well. I am in the middle of the minimalist game. I don't know if you all have heard of this, but essentially every day of the month you get rid of the number of things that correlates to the day of the month. That was a really confusing way of explaining it. So on the first of the month you declutter 1 thing, on the second 2 things, the third 3 things, all the way to the end of the month, so you get to the 30th of the month and you get rid of 30 things. So I'm doing that right now. I'm making it into a YouTube video. I'm in desperate need to do some decluttering around here. So that's coming too, typical content, but thanks for sticking by. Thanks for listening to my story. If anybody has any ideas about a bank who might want to give us some money to build a house, please leave it in the comments down below. Any wisdom is good wisdom for us at this point. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.